So as a store manager, if you needed to hire a new associate, were you ever asked to look at a job ad or to contribute to it?
No. Oh God. No. Quite frankly, I think being honest in a job ad would probably have a lot of people reflecting whether that role is really doing the right thing. And I don't think many companies could face that. Can you handle the hats and the ambiguity? Because retail is a crazy place. Crazy, man. I hired a really high percentage of the people who applied, but the job ad was doing the work for me.
We've just kind of landed on the crux of the issue. Fast-paced environment, competitive pay, entrepreneurial spirit. These phrases appear in thousands of retail job postings, and to HR departments and corporate leaders, they might seem clear and compelling, but to potential candidates, they read more like warning signs. The disconnect between how we advertise retail jobs and how they're actually experienced is creating another vicious cycle. Vague, recycled job descriptions attract poor fit candidates, leading to poor fit hires who quickly leave, creating more turnover and desperation to fill positions with the same ineffective job ads. I'm Bekki Kate, joined by veteran store leader Matt Copeland. Today, we're examining why so many retail job postings fail to connect with quality candidates and how rethinking your approach can transform your talent pipeline and ultimately reduce the costly turnover plaguing the industry. I know you're excited.
I am.
I'm excited too. I feel like this is maybe a little lighter than our previous episodes, although who knows, maybe we'll find a way to turn to the dark.
Have you met me?
Psychology of humans. And it'll get super deep. But to kick off, it wasn't too long ago that you were sifting through job ads to find your next role. And potentially not that long since you've been looking at candidates from your own job ads as well. So just unload. Tell me about that experience. What is the first thing you need to say?
For me, it's you should ask in a job ad for what you actually want, not what you think the candidate wants to hear. And I think a lot of them are worded in this way. And it's like, why are you trying to, like, all this subterfuge? It feels like a bad, again, me and my analogies, it feels like someone creating like a bad Hinge or Tinder profile where they're like, I'm a slob, but how can I like reword that? I'm sort of a laxical, fun person. Like, read slob. And so it's very that. And for me, as someone who really takes words quite literally and really uses a job ad to look into whether I want to work for a brand, the amount of times I've seen a job ad say entrepreneurial spirit, be the CEO of your own store, something about autonomy, and I go, oh my God, that's the right role for me. They get me. And then I get there and they're like, oh, hold on. You can't just move that product to that table, even if it's the right business decision. That has to go through 72 different channels. And to me, it's like, obviously I wouldn't do this, but I want to, where I want to go, wait, where's the job ad? Be the CEO of your own store. That's what I was doing. I was taking literally what you said you wanted, and that's who I am. And so it's like, not only is it subterfuge, you're also not getting the candidates. Because here's the thing, there are plenty of retail managers throwing shade right off the jump. There are plenty of retail managers that would be happy to do exactly what you want, not use their pretty little brain, and go through it. Just say that that's what you want. You would at least get closer candidates to what you actually want. But that doesn't sound sexy. That doesn't sound fun. And quite frankly, I think being honest in a job ad would probably have a lot of people reflecting whether that role is really doing the right thing. And I don't think many companies could face that. So I think instead we make all this like, you're in control and we're looking for high energy and passion. And as someone with high energy and passion and an entrepreneurial spirit, I can tell you right now, most places don't want it. So yeah, that's right from the jump.
I knew it would be there. Who writes the job descriptions? Who's writing these things?
I mean, I think at this point, especially in bigger retailers, it is like a huge group of people.
Yeah.
Like, I think legal's definitely involved for sure, because God forbid we just be honest. And it's like companies have mistaken the risk that comes with being like sued or going viral for the wrong reasons as like carte blanche to like involve legal in, quite frankly, too many things and in too much capacity. And that's like, maybe that's a whole other podcast episode, but I do think that like who's running this company? The C-suite at this point, or is it lawyers? Because that's what it feels like in a lot of retail jobs is, okay, the lawyers they're actually the CEO. Should I just go to them to see if I can move the product? But anyway, I think it's definitely HR, obviously. I think legal is heavily involved. And then quite often, I think it's people many positions above the position that is being hired for. So, for example, if it's a store manager position, no district manager is involved in that writing of that job ad, even though they're the ones who know what they want, know what they need, know what is required to be successful. We're also definitely not including actual store managers that do the job. That would make more sense. Like, I think it's so high up at this point that it's just disconnected. It's based on roles and responsibilities and legal, and then whatever delusion the company has about itself. And one of the things I want to say, because I think it's really relevant to this, and I don't think I've mentioned it yet on any of our episodes, I have this like weird theory or thought process that every company has its own like internal ego about itself, right? I think that's somewhat necessary for a company to like be successful, is to be like, we're the best and we're the greatest coffee shop, or we're the greatest clothing company, or whatever it is. But that ego prevents companies sometimes from seeing their own flaws. It also is why internally you'll sometimes not be appreciated for bringing up those flaws, because they're like, but we're the greatest, as if that means you can't also have flaws or areas for improvement. And I think that ego influences those job ads, because it's a lot of them are aspirational. It's like what they want that position to mean to somebody. Like, we want you to think of yourself as the CEO of your own store and think of yourself as this. And it's like, but is that really what you want? Like, did someone sit down and think, like, what does that person look like? And would it bother us if they actually were exactly this way? So anyway, I think it's a big group of people, and then it's filtered through like who they think they are as a brand.
Yeah. I've asked that question before to my corporate clients when we're talking about things like integrating an employer value proposition into the career site or job ads and things like that. Usually the response is, no, our job ads are good. Like, job ads are job ads, right? There's people almost just think that they are separate. They don't need to have the brand incorporated. There's a set template that they have to follow. And even if I ask who wrote this part, they don't know. And these are sometimes very tenured people. It's almost like these things were found engraved in stone. Like, I don't know. And they're like, it is so, it must read this way. Although I will say, I think back in the day when things were printed, you had to be more succinct, like when you were paying by the word. And now I feel like there are just so many fields, and most companies are filling them with fluff, recycled, decade old verbiage that sounds like everybody else's at this point. So they become longer, but have less information.
Yeah, and there's this weird thing I've seen a lot of companies do where they have like a who we are, who you are. But when you read it, sometimes the job responsibilities really aren't in there, which is funny and going to sound hypocritical, because when I'm hiring, I do look for traits more than I look for, what responsibilities someone has done. But I think when you're doing a job ad, it's kind of important. Yeah, tell me who you want, but also like, what am I doing every day? And I think that's why I've worked at a couple of companies where when you're interviewing for hourly employees, they're like, okay, so just make sure in the interview to like make it clear to them that this is what they'll be doing, so that they aren't surprised when they get here. And I'm like, well, yeah, but that also could be in the job ad, but you don't want to put it because it doesn't sound cute. Like, responsible for cleaning bathrooms isn't cute. So you're like, we'll keep that out of the job ad. But that is part of the role. So yeah, I think there's just a lot of subterfuge and like fogginess, which doesn't help the candidate or the company, quite frankly.
And you kind of touched on this already, but I wanted to ask you, have you ever been consulted? So as a store manager, if you needed to hire a new associate, so someone new on your team, were you ever asked to look at a job ad or to contribute to it?
No. Oh God, no.
Oh God, no.
Well, I mean, those things are and I'm going to say this very honestly, because a lot of retail store managers are going to hear you asking that question and be like, is she dumb? Not because you're dumb, but because you're asking a fair question. But in retail, there's so many things that we've made normal that shouldn't be normal. That even that question is like, of course we haven't, Bekki. Why are you even asking such a silly question? But but in reality, that is a valid question that we have just in retail so shut off because we're like, we don't get to do those things. So like we're gonna pretend that it's normal that we don't get to do those things. And I think it's worth pointing that out.
I mean, my ignorance is my superpower sometimes.
It is. Because you ask questions, and I mean this is going a little off topic, but it's relevant.
Mm,
You're asking questions that I think a lot of retail leaders might have asked themselves, even higher up people,
mhm.
maybe in their first retail job or their first year in their position. And then they quickly learned, oh, that's not a question I can say out loud because people will look at me like, what are you talking about? Or like,
Right.
why are you saying such because can you imagine like a Fortune 500 company actually saying to their like store managers, I'm going to have you look at this job ad and see if it rings true, either for their position or someone under them. Like it sounds like something out of a fantasy novel. It's so far from where retail is right now.
Because yes, I can imagine that. I can. I almost can't imagine not doing that.
Yes. No, exactly. And that's why we're here.
That's why. All right. Okay. So a bunch to unpack here. The things that I think are contributing, right? How did we get here? Obviously, legal concerns, I think, have flattened a lot of what maybe used to exist as a more authentic voice. There is I notice this all the time, an extreme pressure, or maybe it's just a habit, to be honest, of sounding professional versus real. I don't know if it's actually pressure versus just something changes. I see this all the time when I talk to my corporate clients. They're lovely, conversational, comfortable people went just with me, but as soon as they write something that's meant to go to stores or something, you'd think a
Mhm.
robot took over. I think a lot of it also comes down to just having a fuzzy organizational identity or employer brand. Like they're not really sure after this long what their differentiating factor is or how they should be speaking. And look, maintaining a brand at scale is hard. So it's a challenge. And I kind of want to get into the stereotypical anatomy of crappy
Mhm.
job ads. And then as always, hopefully some helpful tips on things that people could start doing differently to really attract people that are going to be happy working with them. I do want to add the caveat that like we talk a lot about employee experience. I say this because Cato is operates kind of in the employer brand EVP space. And a lot of that industry focuses on recruitment marketing. That is the deal, like just
Mhm.
bringing people in, whereas we really focus on the experience of the people who are already with you. So this isn't a great job ad is not a band-aid for a crappy employee experience. Like
Mhm.
it has to actually be good to work there
Yeah, yeah,
your job
for
ad to
sure.
be optimal. So just throwing that out there. Before we jump into the anatomy of a failed job ad, the last time you were looking for a job,
Mhm.
what information were you seeking as you were sifting through all of these ads? What were you skipping? What were you actually trying to find in this haystack?
Oh, what a question. I was really all over the place. I think I kind of scrapped everything and was like, I have no preconceived notion of what's next. Because my MO before that was always I'm going to look up a brand I know and love and shop at, and I'm a customer at. And I'm going to love it from the inside as well. Also, want to just say that unfortunately, that is a terrible strategy. I think now, having done it so many times, because you will lose some heroes in, in the journey. There are some brands I can never look at the same again. But also, just because you like a product doesn't mean like the day to day and all that stuff. So I think going into this process, one of the things I really looked at was the job ad mixed with what I could find on social media and like on their own like about us pages because I was trying to find the bullshit, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I was like, how closely aligned is this job ad with what I hear online, whether it's Glassdoor, TikTok, with your about us? Like, does it all? Because here's the thing, even if it's less than perfect, but it all feels the same, I'm like, I can trust you because there's a consistency here that
Mm.
feels real and I feel good moving forward. That narrowed it down considerably because, again, so many job ads were saying things that I knew were just, to me, one of my red flags, I keep saying CEO and entrepreneur, but my biggest one is like must deal with ambiguity because to me that says the company's communication is bad and you will never have a clear sense of what you should or shouldn't be doing. And you should just deal with it and never complain. That's what ambiguity means. And I've actually had companies while inside it say that successful leaders at the brand were ones who could deal with ambiguity. And I would argue, no, they're not, because they are your tenured leaders who I've met who are jaded and they are putting on a face for you. And the way they deal with your ambiguity is they actually are checked out and just check boxes and just do the bare minimum. So that's what you got for loving ambiguity. I don't deal with ambiguity well at all. I like decisiveness. I want decisions. I don't even care if you make a decision I disagree with. Just make a decision. It's not that hard. So anyway, going forward, like that's really what I was looking for. And then obviously like the interview process, seeing if that also feels like it is all the same. Because sometimes you get a job ad, you're excited, then you go in the interview and I'm like, that's not the job ad. Like that made it seem like we have fun here and it's exciting. And so, yeah, so for me, it was just about trying to match all those things. And I want to say also anecdotally that because companies are so dishonest about what the job really is, I would say to anyone right now in retail looking for a new job, you're unfortunately going to have to not trust the job ad. But also, side note, not even trust yourself a little bit, because you might think you want something. And then when you get it, you're like, oh, this isn't what I want. And I'll say there was one company I worked for that really pushed autonomy on their job ad. And they actually gave it. Autonomy is like my love language. Like you tell me I can like do what I want. And I'm like, yes, I got it. And what I found out is even autonomy can be something that's weaponized, because in that company, they actually did give you all the autonomy. I could change my store hours. I mean, I was in charge of everything. They were like, you're in charge, buddy. And what I learned, what that really meant is you will have so much autonomy, but you will never have support because it's all up to you. So I think you just have to be really careful about one, taking them at face value, but also thinking about like, there has to be a balance within those things.
Yeah, everything exists on a spectrum. Everything has diminishing returns at some point.
Yes.
Okay, let's break down the anatomy of ineffective job ads. The one that I immediately go to because it's the one that kind of just cuts me the deepest as someone who just cares a lot about how companies articulate their organizational identity. Generic boilerplate happy talk about us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually the first thing, like first thing, and it's long and it's a history lesson. It doesn't actually tell you anything about what it might be like to work there. It's usually founded in 1942. Company is country's leading category provider. Our X number of stores share the mission of delivering the most value because customer service is our main priority. I have learned nothing except that you didn't care enough to look at this through fresh eyes.
It's like bad job ad Mad Libs is what you just described.
Yeah, it is that.
You just insert words here and you have a job ad.
Yeah. So question for you, when you were sorting through all these job ads looking for your great fit role, did that help you at all?
No, because I would hope that most candidates would look up that. I mean, I say that as someone who just interviewed a bunch of people who never heard of things. But to me, that's also a weeding out thing. Don't do the candidate's homework for them. If they don't know who you are, why the hell are they applying?
Not helpful. Check. Let's go right into vague job responsibilities because I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about some of the ones that I've collected from. I've got a bunch of job ads open too that I'm hoping we might even try to fix one in real time. For example, assist customers in a fast-paced environment. Does that say anything to you? What is it like? You read that as a candidate?
No, because to me that's like I just thought of something. They probably shouldn't put anything in a job ad they wouldn't want a candidate to put on their resume. So if I put assisted customers in a fast-paced environment, you'd be like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So like, if you don't want to see it on my resume, don't put it in the job ad.
To clarify, it wouldn't be in your resume because like, duh? Like,
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Like, obviously, I know that companies won't do this because, like, my ideas are sometimes too radical, and I get that. But, like, I would really respect the hell out of a retail job posting that was, like, normal retail shenanigans. And then I'd be like, great. And what else? Because every company has a what else. And that's what I need you to tell me.
That's exactly what I was thinking as I was reading through this. Like, you think he doesn't know that? Do you think this is helpful? Okay, this one might feel a little different. Perform additional duties as assigned.
To me, I have a lot of problems with this on a lot of levels. So I am the person that, as a leader, yes, if I ask you to do something that's like outside your job duties, like I hope that you do it. But it's giving like that old school, like it's 1982 and we work on the stock exchange and you're like the new intern and I told you to go scrub the toilet, even though we have janitors and you should do it just because I'm your boss.
Mm.
That's to me how I read that. And I realize that that's like a very intense interpretation of that and not everyone would do that. But that's the legal department. Not they have their hands all over that right there. They were like, you have to add something about they have to do everything we say. Because if you don't, then they can sue us if we ask them to clean the bathroom. And if they say it's because we hate them and now they're gonna sue us because they had to clean like that's what that is.
Yeah.
Tell the legal department to go worry about something. They have bigger fish to fry.
Sounds very much like a catch-all to me, like
Mm.
plus anything else. Okay, how about these are real? Ensure that the store culture embodies, insert brand, values, and its commitment to the community. And I just want to note as a caveat, the values were not in the job ad. And I had a very very difficult time finding them on the career site.
That's actually amazing. That's like an SNL skit. Yeah, I have so many problems with that because again, I don't read everything with like a pessimistic view.
Mhm.
Okay, maybe I do a little, but um to me that kind of reads like we don't do anything to uphold the values, so god damn it, we hope you do. Because I've worked for companies like that where one in particular where what actually made me like the final straw, and I said this in my exit interview, was I felt so emotionally exhausted trying to prove to my team that the company was as amazing as the company said it was, and it felt like it was my responsibility and only my responsibility to
Mhm.
prove to them that it was worth it when one, you weren't giving me the resources, two, you weren't doing the things you should be doing to prove it, and three, you weren't proving it to me. So I slowly, the disparity between what I believed and what I saw and what I felt were splitting. So then I felt like I was lying to my team. So that to me, God, is that a company I've worked for?
I think so.
No. Okay. But yeah, that's how that reads to me. Because it's like, what
Mhm.
resources are you providing? That would
Mhm.
be my follow-up question in an interview. So it said, I mean, that's the other thing I've gotten good at is like in an interview, I like have some of the job ad like interlaced in my questions. And if they look confused based on why I'm asking the questions, we got some problems.
Right.
So if I were to ask in that interview, so I see here store manager job is to uphold the values. What resources are available to me to keep those values alive? And this is actually a question I asked in my last round of interviews as I was interviewing to every company I went in, what will my leader do to keep me inspired? It's become my most important question.
That's amazing. Have you ever gotten good answers?
There's a reason I'm where I'm at right now. Yes.
Glad to hear that. This makes me wonder values at all in a job ad. Is that something you want to see, especially if it's listed in a job ad? Or is that something, do you want a job ad to just like, I'll research the company on your own website and just tell me what, about this particular role in the job ad?
I have conflicting feelings because I feel like I
Right.
more want the role.
Yeah.
I think the value should only be listed if you're going to be radically honest, because otherwise, values at this point is a hollow word
Yeah.
for most people, especially younger people, because they're like, sure, big corporation values, oxymoron. So to me, it's like, unless you're going to say something in that job ad that's going to make me go, holy crap,
Mm.
then just don't put it. If they said they one of their values was work-life balance, let's say. If you're just going to put like our value is that you have a life full of balance, don't put that because it reads hollow.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to put something radical like we'd rather have you go to your kid's baseball team than stay late, and that's how we'll show you that we whatever. If you're going to put that in a job ad, something that makes me go, "Oh wow, you're saying it in print right here in writing." I mean, you could still be lying, but at least you're being specific about what that value means. Then maybe I would say it's important, but otherwise just take it out because, again, a good candidate should do that research. And quite frankly, I think companies should weed out people who don't. It is 2025. How candidates are still showing up to interviews for the love of all that is holy and don't know the basics about a company is mind boggling.
So I really like that idea about being specific about what you mean by a value. And we'll maybe get into employer value proof which is something we talk about a lot, like move beyond the proposition and tell me what that looks like we talk about in operations in the day-to-day. To help, I'm trying to find this company's values that, again, was very hard to find. But those values that they're expecting you to uphold, according to this job description, are inclusion. One word, that's it. How might they improve this job ad? For one, by including the values if they're listing them in the job ad. But then a specific example like you just talked about. That would make you feel more connected to the role.
Something to the effect of talking about what that means more specifically. So upholding inclusion in stores by creating an environment where all identities are welcomed and celebrated with no tolerance for disinclusion, but there's a better word for that.
Got it. Okay, helpful. Let me find it again. Engagement. That's it. Okay. Can you uphold engagement? Let's assume they mean your team, like employee engagement. So for your team.
I think their values are just bad and generic. So like I take back my previous answer and think they need to go back to the drawing board before they put them in a job ad, because what does that mean? And I also think, and this is something we've talked about, and it actually links all together, like so many of the things. But like, if my job is engagement, and the way that I do that is by being the CEO of my own store and deciding to not use your scheduling program the way it was intended so that I may keep my employees happy and engaged through betterment of their life, I expect to be rewarded for that, because those are all the things you ask for, but that's not what you mean. There are so many times, and I'm not trying to be a well, actually person, but I really do read a job ad and a job role with intentionality and go there for that place. And I use that as an example because that's so real. Where then I get sort of like, trouble isn't the right word, but people are like, you broke 6 rules to keep retention high and to do whatever, and I could have the best results. And it's like, yeah, the rules that were actually in direct conflict with your values and what you said the job was. So like, all of these things aren't speaking to each other. And that's a big part of the problem.
Oh man, I would love to do an episode on just values, on just company values. I think would be really interesting. There are more values rather than being customer centric and community minded and innovative. Same. There are more words. Okay, so if you're going to put them in a job ad, at least explain what they are and ideally include some sort of example of what that might look like in a day-to-day, I think would be helpful. Let's move on for now. Curious to hear your thoughts on this one. Real, again. Hold yourself and your team accountable for flawless execution of operational excellence. Flawless. No mistakes.
Well, unfortunately, the person who posted this podcast to all the platforms, named Bekki Kate, put this as a clean podcast. So I can't respond to this in any way that wouldn't just be like one long bleep. I don't think I have anything of value to add. That's not that.
Yeah, see previous podcast episodes for the importance of mistakes in building many facets of company culture.
But also, to your point previously, these are all very generic. I mean, You've added flawless and excellence, but you haven't described what that means. And again, and we've had this discussion like offline, as you have like really dug into like, what is retail? How does it operate? What does it all mean? And one of the questions you asked me, this is where it comes in. You said, when people say operations in retail, what do they mean? And the thing is no one knows, because it's like this ambiguous term that just holds a lot of like, is that like, when you say operational excellence, do you mean like merchandising? Do you mean cleanliness of the store? Do you mean I'm going to keep all the like records and employee files and like LP files and safety audits organized, and I'm going to make sure all that stuff's done? What do you mean by operational? Because every company means something different when they say operations.
Yeah. Okay. We'll get there. Let's talk about ambiguous qualifications. And some of this might overlap with our red flag phrases, because the first one I have is must have entrepreneurial spirit.
I think now having worked so many store manager jobs and being someone who really like thinks of a store as my own, I think a lot of companies, what they're actually saying is, we have figured most things out, but in all the areas where we haven't figured something out, we expect you to figure it out on the fly.
Mhm.
They don't actually mean think of this like your own business, even when they say that, because I'm like, you don't. And I take that to heart. Like I'll fix a toilet. I know how to fix a toilet. I'll fix a fridge. I'll paint a wall. Like I will literally like, this is my store and I want it to look a certain way. I really take to heart like, this is my space and it's my business and I want to grow it. And I don't think that that's what they mean. They mean when something goes wrong and we don't have a manual for it, you better be able to think on your feet.
Okay, which doesn't sound like a bad thing.
No, but say that.
Yeah.
Say that. Just say what you want. Or if there are ways that someone can be entrepreneurial, and there have been some companies where I could flex that muscle a little stronger than others, then say must have an entrepreneurial spirit through, I hate to use the word innovative, but innovative or creative ideas that help grow the business, such as event planning, customer acquisition, whatever it is. Because there are some companies where I was able to leave my four walls and grow the business by getting out in the neighborhood and like making myself known, giving away some free product, having events. Like I worked at a company where we had like a Yelp event. This is when Yelp was bigger than it is now. If that's what you mean, then just say, how can I be entrepreneurial? Put some guardrails on it so I don't walk in thinking like I can do a lot more than I really can.
Yeah. Okay. This one less ambiguous, but I just thought it was really interesting. And it wasn't the preferred because sometimes they'll separate out
Yeah.
required qualifications and then preferred. Bachelor's degree in business or related field.
I am so biased for this because I don't have a degree. So nothing I say is going to be very kind, but I think a degree could help someone if they also had a lot of experience or a good amount of experience. But I don't think it should. I think it should be one of those things where it's like, if you had 5 years of being a store manager and you had a business degree, that's amazing. But also, then I have this follow up question for that company. And offline, you'll have to tell me what the company is. What autonomy or control or functions would be improved by them having a business degree? Because if you're just going to make them follow checklists and not use their brain, what's the degree for? And I would argue in most companies, they won't need that degree because you're not. I mean, I've worked for a few companies now where you can't see your own P&L. So, like, is it one of those companies? Because what's the business degree for then? That would be my question.
Well, it did also say in the essential 1+ year progressively responsible store management experience in a retail environment as a general/store manager. Clear as day.
Clear as day. And you know what's so funny when they say the progressive responsibility thing? It's so goofy to me. Like, it just is. Because also, what do you mean? Do you mean like I got moved to a higher volume store?
Yeah.
Do you mean like I grew my sales by 20%? So like that's progressively responsible because now I'm running more business. Like what do you want? Just say what you want. Again, I feel like I'm on a really bad date.
You're like Ryan Gosling. What do you
Mhm.
want? Okay, so well then experience developing a team and operational excellence to drive profitable year-over-year sales and margins. All the same ad.
Duh.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's your job as a store manager. Again, you wouldn't let me put that on my resume, so don't put it in your job ad.
Okay, let's jump right into and jump in with your own anytime here. But red flag phrases. I think there are a lot of savvy retail candidates reading these things. And I think there's been like some unofficial code worked into these things that just means something entirely different than HR certainly thinks it does.
Mhm.
So a good example might be a fast-paced environment.
Mhm.
Does it raise any red flags for you?
Yeah, sometimes, especially when I know the brand, because like, what if the brand actually isn't that fast paced? Because that means to me, like, there's some chaos that's unnecessary. And I've seen that in retail a lot, and it goes to the false urgency in retail.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it fast paced because we're running like a Costco, or is it fast paced and we're running like a Gucci? And no shade to Gucci because I have no idea what it's like working there, but like that's not a fast-paced place. But are you saying it's fast-paced because like it's so chaotic and you're making people switch tasks 800 times that
Mhm.
like it's fast-paced because you've made it that way arbitrarily? Because I've also worked for those companies.
Yeah, I think fast pace is definitely, I've heard a lot of corporate executives use it as a positive about retail. Like they think that's going to be exciting for some people who aren't attracted to sitting at a desk 40 hours a week.
Yeah, that's just what retail needs. It needs more pace, please.
Okay, competitive pay.
That means you're gonna lowball me. That's what that means. That means you're gonna try to get me to take the lowest you can get me to take.
Yeah, and it's very much like we know exactly what everyone else is paying, and it's somewhere, it's not the lowest.
Yeah, it's kind of like, to me that reads as like if the range for that position in that market is like 50 to 75, they're paying you 52.
Right.
They're like, it's competitive. We beat that other guy over there.
Yeah, yeah. Wear many hats. Does that mean anything to you?
I mean, it either means that, again, it goes to the chaos.
Yeah.
So much of this to me, the entrepreneurial spirit, the hats, the fast paced, the ambiguity, all of these words to me say the same thing, which is we're a hot mess. There's a lack of organization and too much communication. And we need you to be the person through which it all funnels into so that you can do operational excellence.
Do, do operational
Mhm.
excellence.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. So what's interesting, you know, when I was first capturing these, I was like, oh, for sure, these are all hard red flags. But then as I'm reading through them, I mean, in a perfect world, they are what's cool about retail, right? Like,
Mhm.
I mean, not the competitive pay, but like fast pace, flexible schedule, constantly varied, wear many hats, entrepreneurial spirit. Those are potentially draws to the industry, are they not?
No, I would agree with that because I would say like the best thing about being, say, a general manager of like, especially like a bigger store is like because you can wear so many hats, you can kind of have a very varied day if that's your thing, which it is my thing. Where
Mm.
like one day you're merchandising and another day you're helping your shipment team, another day you're working on register because you want to like coach and sort of improve whether speed or service at the register. So that's to me wearing many hats and doing many things. And that is exciting. I just think when you put them all together in one job ad,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, but what is clearly defined then? Because that sounds to me like nothing is clearly defined. And a lot of people, all the way to the top of retail, will make comments like, well, this is just retail. It's like we've accepted chaos and
Mhm.
decided that it's necessary. And one of the things that really like hit me like a ton of bricks a couple of years ago, and it was actually during COVID because of the chaos of COVID, was wow, so much of this chaos is manufactured because we act like it's just nature of the business, but like customers are actually quite predictable. Monday is always going to be a heavy return day on Monday mornings. It just is. Tuesday, almost everywhere I've worked, slowest day of the week. Obviously, Friday, Saturday, Sunday are busy. Like when I worked in coffee, every Friday morning is busier than every other weekday morning. There's all of these things that are actually quite patterned and readable.
Mhm.
And yet we act like chaos is necessary, but we're the ones creating the chaos. And then being like, can you handle it? Can you handle the hats and the ambiguity? Because retail is a crazy place. Crazy, man. Is it? Or have we just created a lot of inconsistency, bad communication, changing operations constantly? And now we're like, okay, we need someone who can keep up with that. Because you know what? Hiring someone who can keep up with that easier than just trying to make it more of a consistent streamlined business.
The Netflix.
I don't know if you have any more red flag words, but I have one.
Yes, please.
It's my biggest red flag word, actually, over the entrepreneurial and all that stuff. And that is grit.
Yeah.
Get me out of here. I'm running screaming. And I remember when I was somewhere, I remember asking someone when I was kind of struggling before I figured out how to not be struggling. And I was like, what makes a successful external candidate? What is the difference between the ones you've seen succeed and the ones you've seen fail? And the answer that I've gotten twice, and now both times in reflection, I'm like, red flag, is the candidates that succeed have a lot of grit. And what I've learned that they mean by that, having been in those roles and had the grit, is, and I did have the grit, because I got to a successful place both times. But then I was like incredibly like resentful that you made me use my grit. And I've had a lot of grit in my life for personal reasons because life has just, done some things that required grit. But
Yeah.
folding clothes and running a clothing store should not be one of those things. It's the same way I feel about like when they're like people, deal with adversity and I'm like, at a clothing store? Why am I even dealing with adversity and grit? Folding clothes and selling clothes to customers. And the customers are not the problem. I mean, they can be, sure. Like, sometimes they're a problem, but they're not what's making a job hard. And so grit to me is now like the number one, if you say it, I will run fast and far. Not to get super intense on a podcast about retail, but like to me, it's like when your car breaks down and you're unemployed and you don't know how you're going to afford your next meal, you need some grit to get through that. When you're in your early 40s and you have a brand new baby, but also now your mom gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's and you have to think about care, you need some grit to get through that. Okay? Like those are times in life where like you got to be gritty to persevere and not let like things break you. So to me, it's like for you to say that that's the quality I need to bring to sell a $5 t-shirt is wild and actually offensive.
Damn, Matt. We went there. We found a way. You found
Did find a way. You said lighthearted and I said, I see you.
Yeah. Hold my beer.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay. Yeah. No, I hear you. I mean, it's like it's a product of its own making, right? And that's exactly what we were talking about in all the episodes. Like, why does it have to be this way? Yeah. Can't we make it a little more symbiotic? Life is hard enough. All right. You said something before that about a question you ask interviewers. What makes a successful external hire?
Mhm.
If I could sum up in one sentence what a really great job ad would describe, it would be that.
Mhm.
Because then you could be like, I'm that.
Mhm.
I have things. I have and want to do those things long term.
One of my favorite answers actually to that question
Mm-hmm.
was basically they were like, when you come externally, it's going to be hard and you're going to learn a lot and you're going to make a lot of mistakes and you're going to have people on your team who know more than you and you're going to have to navigate that with like humility and grace. And the people who succeed are the people who can get through that and not let it unmotivate them because they're humble enough basically to get through that experience of like learning and mistakes and maybe your team teaching you something and you have to and your team teaching you things. I don't find it difficult, not to like praise me, but I just like being humbled isn't something that like upsets me. I'm like, oh, I'm a human, okay, and I don't. But it's like basically their answer was like someone being able to navigate that and not being like resentful that they don't know something or like think that because they're the store manager, they should know everything and have the right answer all the time. That's the person who succeeds versus not. And I thought that was a great answer.
Yeah. So does it need to speak to character? Like you need to be able to self-select
Mm-hmm.
or self-eliminate yourself by reading a job ad. And just like all of the ones that I've been looking at, there are different categories and big and small retailers throughout North America, and they all read pretty much the same. And at no point did I feel, and I know they're not for me, but at no point did I think that someone would read them and think like, feel a connection,
Mm-hmm.
feel like this feels right.
So, fun story. I got in trouble once. Not a lot. Not trouble is the wrong word. I got corrected once because me and my assistant manager went rogue and we posted our own Indeed ads for positions at a very, very large, multi-billion dollar retailer. But we had the easiest time filling positions. We were filling positions left and right, and we had no open roles, and other people were struggling. And we were honest about what we did, and then we got told we couldn't do it anymore, which is fine because we got it. But then that's when I gave the feedback. And because we were hiring for specific day parts, so specific shifts that we needed to hire. And I find that companies, because they just have that like blank, shipment person, but what is the shift? Shipment is usually a set shift. The put the shift in the ad. So we created our own Indeed ads. They had a link to the real ad, obviously, so people could apply. But it literally was like, the title was like shipment person. Like, it was something super simple. And they were like, you're filling shipment people like crazy. So many people. And I'm like, because you have people applying who don't know it starts at 5 or who have class Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Like for my store, every store had different shipment days.
Mhm.
And we would do that same thing for cashiers. Looking for cashiers must have Friday night, 5 to 9 p.m., whatever it was. And we were just very specific with what it was, mostly around times that we were specific. Like, they're just looking to mindlessly unwrap some clothes and put them on a hanger. Like, why are we like, and I don't mean to diminish the people who do that job, because it's also some of the hardest work in retail that gets unappreciated because it's not seen by the customer and it happens before most people even have their coffee. But like, the person who does that is like, they just want to like come in and do that and then go. Yeah, some people on that team maybe grow or whatever, but in my experience, a lot of them are like, I am here because I don't want to deal with humans and I want to just do this thing from this time to this time. It's like, why can't we just be specific about what we're looking for? So anyway, that's my story about how it actually works when you're specific.
Man, it's really interesting. I can tell. I have a visceral reaction whenever somebody tells me like some people don't care about work, right? Like, oh, some people don't care about your values or blah, blah, blah. But I'm getting better about it. I know that's the case. I know not everyone is obsessed with why and things like that, or work in general. Some people are like, I'm super into my work and stuff, and that's not everyone. I respect that, but
I don't want to say that all shipment people don't care about values or like all store managers do, because quite frankly, there are plenty of store managers that are like, keep your values and let me just run my store.
mm,
But I think that we need to figure out, I guess, what the question, only a company can figure out the answer to the question you're asking,
yeah,
but they're not even asking the question, which is the problem. Because I would say, if you're constantly interviewing candidates and you're like, my God, these are not the right candidates, then your job ad's broken.
yeah,
Now, if you're always finding the right candidates, and I would say where that's happened to me the most, the right candidates are just kind of like walking in the door, are companies that have, to your point, a strong brand that is known. I'll give you an example. Starbucks, every barista that applies to Starbucks knows exactly how hard the job is going to be. They know exactly what Starbucks is and isn't. They know exactly what Starbucks values are. They know that they're going to get free Spotify premium and and what some of the benefits are. Like, I mean, Starbucks could just have a job ad that said barista with no words and it would be sort of understood. But then I've worked for companies that are lesser known, right? They don't have a strong, maybe they have strong values, but maybe not a strong brand identity, or vice versa. It kind of can go all ways. You just don't get a lot of the candidates you're looking for because they don't know you. So you're just getting the people who apply to this generic job ad,
mhm.
which means, quite frankly, you get some generic candidates who are like, who give you the answer of, well, I mean, I saw that like I'm looking for like an assistant manager position and you're hiring for one. So like, we're a match. And it's like, we're not, though, because that's not what I want. But my job ad that the company like put out is generic. So you think that's the role, and it's not. Like, we're looking for something different.
I think this is a systemic issue, as so much of this is, because, like you said, I think a bunch of hands are in writing the job ad, and hands from potentially 100 or like years ago.
Yeah.
We don't know who they are. They've just been regurgitated, recycled over time. Then, like talent acquisition, right? At least in a lot of companies that I've worked with, TA thinks they do a good job if they get a lot of applicants.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we need to cast a broad net. Like we need
Ugh,
butts and seats.
that phrase.
Yes. And so and maybe that's why these end up being so they don't want to eliminate anyone from applying because their KPI honestly probably is applications, not necessarily like stays for at least 90 days.
And it is, because some companies I've worked for have like a little meter in the like talent acquisition tool
Yeah.
that it will tell you how a job ad is performing, and it's purely based on applications, even
Yeah.
if they're all crap. And I would argue, if I got 100 applications and 10 of them are really what I'm looking for, versus I got 10 applications and all what I'm looking for, I would argue that that is actually better, because those people knew that the brand was right for them. Now I'm not sifting through a bunch of, I would rather just look through the 10 that were right and be like, wow, 10 great applicants. Now let me get really super picky and pick 6 to interview.
Yeah.
Because honestly, when you actually pick the 10 of 100, it actually feels like you have worse choices, not better ones. You're like, oh, this is the only 10 that's viable in this huge stack.
Yeah. And maybe we've just kind of landed on the crux of the issue is that they are written for maximum applicants, no disqualifiers. So, like changing how you measure the efficacy of your job ads, not just by number of applicants, but interview show up rates, interview to hire ratios, 90-day retention.
Get rid of 90-day retention. I mean,
Yeah.
retail really needs to push the bar 180 something.
Go. All right.
I think there's this myth that if you only get 10 applicants, actually, I'm going to make it even more extreme because I've actually been in this situation. One time when I was working for a local coffee company where I had a lot of autonomy because I was doing so many things and I was opening a store, I actually got to make the job ad. It was the only time I got to make it. I did have to involve our like HR sort of person, and he was fine with most things I put, but I hired a really high percentage of the people who applied, probably to a degree that people probably thought I wasn't very picky. But the job ad was doing the work for me.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to do all of these like bad interviews. I actually remember one of the baristas making a joke. He was like, "So you just hire everyone you meet, huh?" And I was like, "They're all good. They all fit." Which is another whole episode that I think we should talk about actual hiring, because I also think that retailers are too picky and they let perfect be the enemy of good. Because while you're being picky about a shipment person, your shipment team is down a man or maybe two.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're working harder and they're getting frustrated. So now you onboard this person, this unicorn that you found that probably isn't even a unicorn. And now your team is aggravated because you're like, we waited 2 months for you to find this schmuck who like is slow. Like in some areas of retail, I would argue that like just, I don't want to say a body because that's not it either, but like being efficient and getting someone in the door and training them well and getting them into the program is better than all the hemming and hawing, because
Mm-hmm.
what happens to morale while the hemming and hawing goes on? Now you have to fix that, and now you're might be introducing a candidate into a bad environment, or your team actually starts to lose respect for you because you took so long and they're looking at you like, Matt, it took us 2 months and like the best you could do was Sean. He's like half awake. So yeah, I mean, I think it's,
Mm-hmm.
again, it all feeds into each other.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that job ad because you said it was working, it was doing the work for you. So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about the components of a job ad that actually does what an effective job ad should do. In a way, repel a lot of people and compel the people who are good fit. And I use fit in
Mm-hmm.
quotations because I don't mean fit as in compliant robot. I mean, it's going to be a contributing member of this store culture.
So I got to put real honesty in my job ad, which got me candidates. We were a growing coffee company. So we had at that point 2 stores. This was our third. It was our biggest. And in growing and in being a local company, not everything was together. So when I made the job ad, one of the things that was like bulleted was essentially like, as a growing coffee company, we do not have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Something to the effect of, we do not have all the answers, which can be frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But the benefit of that is, unlike most places, you get to contribute towards the solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And that got me, just that one line alone, it's why it sticks out, got me a lot of candidates who were like, oh my God, I've worked at so many coffee shops. Do you know the thing that always frustrates me is like, why don't they put this here? Or why do we do it this way?
Mm-hmm.
And I got people who were like, and you're saying we get to like figure that out? That line attracted a lot of people who were like, I care about the space I work in so much. I would love to tell you how it could be better.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted. And we really really spelled that out in the job ad. Now I wish I had a copy. It was very specific and honest in a way that like most job ads just cannot be at this point. I think they put a lot about like, we're looking for hardworking self-starter, blah, blah, blah. But who is a hardworking self-starter? Someone who cares and someone who probably has a lot of opinions about how they start and where they start and how they get there.
Yeah. And we've mentioned on previous podcasts that that person, their performance, how they show up is wildly dictated by their environment. So you can't say we want a self-starter and then put someone in an environment where they're not safe, making mistakes, where they have to have flawless operational excellence. And
That one, I want to make that a t-shirt.
flawless operational excellence.
Because it's like so bad, it's like good.
Oh, FOE.
I was just gonna say, and it spells out faux. It's great. It really just works on so many levels.
Okay, so I feel like what I'm taking away from this discussion is, for one, job ads are a part of an ecosystem.
Mhm.
A candidate that you want isn't just looking at a job ad blind without any other awareness or experience with your brand. So I say that on one hand because you had mentioned that you can't look at some brands the same ever again after being part of their hiring process, which I think is important for a lot of corporate retailers to know, because I mean, that makes obvious sense. And with turnover the way it is, I mean, you're talking hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people every single year who are getting bitter about your brand because of how poor their experience was with your job ad through your hiring experience.
Mhm.
So worth noting, I think. I also think this an interesting idea just to think of it as an ecosystem too. Like, your career site should be doing work for you. Your career site is one thing, and I think that's probably where more of the in-depth about us, and I don't mean the year that you were founded and by whom and how many stores you have. I mean, what are you about? What are we all doing here together as a team?
Mhm.
Some sort of clear, differentiated information on that. And then use the job ad to get specific about what you said earlier. So the characteristics about what makes someone successful if they were to get hired here. And then have the characteristic or the thing and then give a specific example. Like, give it some context, I feel like, is what we're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then after or along whatever order the characteristic stuff, there is some basic, should be obvious logistics stuff that should be in there for that person to know if they can physically work that job.
And I think I'm going to use some specific examples too. Lush requires its employees to do on-skin demonstrations for clients that come in. So like that means you're physically putting lotion on someone else. That's a comfortability for people that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
And they definitely screen that out in the interview process. But why isn't that in the job ad? Because one, that would screen all those people out. And two, there are actually a lot of people, especially in the like cosmetics background, who would be perfectly comfortable with that and actually love that level of personalized customer service. So I think when we're talking about responsibilities, ignore we're all helping customers in a fast acting environment, whatever. Ignore all of that. What are the things that differentiate you from other retailers that could potentially be things some people just don't want to do?
Yeah.
And just put that in the job ad. It doesn't have to be negative, like you must touch people, must be excited about the opportunity to offer clients on-skin demonstrations live in store. That's not hard. See, I did it right there for you. Take it for free. I won't even charge you. But like, that's the part that really has always baffled me about retail, is sometimes it's in the second interview that you learn the thing that they're trying to weed out, and you're like, why don't you just put this down?
Yeah.
Because even if it's considered a negative to some people, to a whole other group of people, it's actually a positive because they like doing the thing. And it actually says a lot about how you feel as a leaders about whatever the thing is. That you feel like you have to like bamboozle people into applying and then tell them the thing. Because like when I started at Williams-Sonoma, cooking demos are like a requirement. But for some retail leaders, like let's say you came from like a clothing store, you'd be like, I don't want to get involved in like food service. For me, I didn't find that out really until I started. And I was like, this is the most exciting thing I've ever done in my life. What do you mean? Like, you've just made my whole world. This should have been in the job ad. I would have applied faster. And so it's like the thing that you're hiding or putting fog over could be the thing that draws you I mean, there are tons of candidates who like to do those niche things in a brand that other people in that brand actually hate doing, and you could get more of the people who like doing the thing.
Right.
Whether it's cooking at Williams Sonoma or doing skincare at Lush or hosting community events at Old Navy, whatever it is, some people are going to hate that. Weed them out now. Weed them out in the job ad. Because for every one you weed out, I guarantee there's 3 that are like, oh my God, I get to like host this big event in my store with like the fire department and the police and the whole community and like have fun. That's community. That's important to me. Where's that in the job ad?
It's so funny as you're talking, and we talk so much about vicious cycles, and that's why we're here, right? Like we talked about how we're stuck in this chaos. This casting a wide net is eliminating things like that would get some people really excited and stay. And so casting the wide net is contributing to turnover, which is contributing to the justification for casting a wide net.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is just a revolving door. I mean, to be cliche about it.
And the reality is when it comes to hiring, and I think this is the piece that maybe one of Matt's most hot takes, right along with all the loss prevention hot takes, is most people can do most jobs in retail with the right support, training, and encouragement.
I think that's true in every industry.
Yeah. But that's like the thing people don't want to say, because then they're like, what does that say about me and my job and my performance? Like, I'm special.
It makes sense. Okay. So, I mean, obviously, this is going to require a paradigm shift for a lot of people, a big mindset shift. But if I could say, try one thing, add one potentially disqualifying item, bullet to your job description. One thing that might make people go, oh my God, not for me, which is a good thing. That's what you want if they're going to have to do that thing anyway. But it's going to make the person who is pumped about it just that much more excited.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And because retail is so timeline and KPI driven, 4 weeks from when this podcast launches, that's your deadline, retailers, to do that.
Yes.
They love a goal.
I love it. Okay. In closing.
Light and happy.
Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely a little lighter, a little happier. The companies who get this, God, the money going out on job ads and recruitment marketing campaigns, tons of money on the table to be saved there in terms of recruitment marketing costs. For one, if you can slow the bleeding of your own turnover, see previous episodes and future ones for that. But then in not having to cast such a broad net and to constantly be hiring for the same roles and to be creating that bad brand sentiment from the people who likely started as a fan, as a customer, and then who went through your hiring process or job ad process and are not so much anymore. Any last thoughts?
I think, like you said, it's all cyclical. And the one other thing was just to, if you're not casting a broad net, that also saves your internal employees a lot more time, that they could be engaging their teams and, flawlessly having operational excellence. So it really is all interrelated.
Absolutely. The last thing I want to say, this is actually the first podcast we're recording since this podcast has gone live.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting. I think we're both really eager to hear from you. If this is interesting to you, if you disagree with us, I think we're especially interested. If you have questions, want follow-ups, ideas for future episodes. I know Matt's journey isn't his own. I know other people experience these things. And so I think we'd love to hear everyone weigh in. And same to corporate leaders. If we've covered something and you have a big but, or sure, that sounds like a nice solution, but here's what's happening for me and why it's not possible. We're here to hear it all. We're here to get down to it. So please write in. LinkedIn's probably the best place to find me. I spell Bekki weird. It's Bekki. Kate is a little weird too, CAIT on LinkedIn, but would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And I think to just reiterate, especially, I said I like my teams to sort of disagree and throw out their opinions. I feel the same way about anyone listening here, whether it be corporate or former peers or, people who are in similar roles, just what you're hearing. And then also, is there something we're not saying? Are you like, okay, you said a lot, but you also didn't say this. What about this? I would love to, what am I missing? Because I also think me and Bekki have had so many conversations and I talk so much. It's hard to know, have we missed something, or is there something that we've left under a rock that we need to uncover? And I would love to get to all of those things.
Yeah. LinkedIn, do you feel like your preferred method of contact?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. All right. Thanks as always, Matt.
Thank you.
You're listening to Dear Corporate, Love Stores.